Welcome, everyone. My name is Simon Ketchison. I'm the Confident Learners Product Director here at the Learning Bar. I want to welcome you to our second webinar in the series Building Leaders and Readers. This webinar is about some of the most common questions educators have about teaching children to read. There are many. We'll discuss the difference between phonemic awareness and phonics, but we'll talk about building reading fluency, and we'll talk about strategies to help children engage with texts. We'll then open up the floor to Q&A. The webinar is being recorded. We'll make sure that you have a copy of the recording as soon as possible by email. Feel free to enter those questions in the chat or in the Q&A box at any point during the webinar. If we don't answer it in the course of the webinar itself, of course, we'll take some time at the end. So before I go any further, I do want to acknowledge the traditional ancestral territory of the First Nations people in our respective locations on which we are learning, working, and gathering today. We pay our respects to the members past and present with honor and gratitude as they have stewarded the land through the generations. And I'm confident that we'll continue to work together in the spirit of truth and reconciliation. Thank you. I'm excited to introduce two of our team members that are going to be leading the webinar today. Erica Sutherland and Sandy Farrower. Erica is a literacy mentor here at the Learning Bar, and she has taught with the Halifax Regional Centre for Education for, I believe, over 30 years as an early elementary classroom teacher, a literacy coach, a literacy consultant, and a reading and writing interventionist. Sandy is an instructional literacy coach with the Learning Bar with a rich background that spans roles in early learning as a supervisor and learning coach at Livingston Range in Southern Alberta, and 15 plus years of experience with the Calgary Board of Education as a classroom teacher, learning leader, and early learning specialist. I will hand it over to you, ladies, and we look forward to the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon.
Thanks so much, and welcome everyone. We are so excited to have you all here with us today. To get us started today, we just want to provide you a brief overview of what exactly we are going to be talking about today. So to start us off, we are going to be talking about what is the difference between phonological awareness, phonemic awareness, and phonics, and why they are important. And then we will talk about how do children learn to automatically recognize words and read fluently. And then we will wrap up our discussion with how do we teach children to comprehend texts that they read.
Before we get started with all of that, I just wanted to give you a brief outline about where the Learning Bar came from and why we're here. Dr. Wilms founded the Learning Bar about 15 years ago after having worked in social development for 40 years. Since he created the company, Dr. Wilms has brought together a team of educators, researchers, literacy experts, and child development experts who all share the same vision and drive, giving all children the opportunity to thrive. For us, that means ensuring that educators, schools, and districts can access the solutions and resources they need to support their students and provide them with the fundamental skills to learn. That starts with literacy.
So this shows an overview of our literacy offerings, and they are ranging from professional learning opportunities to assessment and intervention. These offerings have been designed to meet the evolving needs of educators, schools, districts, and education authorities. What we will be discussing today, answering common questions and teaching children how to read, is focused on building some of the key elements outlined within our systematic reading instruction professional learning.
So we're going to begin by taking a moment to think about what you already know about phonological awareness, phonics, and phonemic awareness. How are they different? Take a moment to think about that question and jot down your answers in the chat box. As you're looking at the answers that are populating in the chat box, are there things that you resonate with? Are there things that you may have forgotten from previous trainings? Or maybe there are pieces that are completely new to you?
So as we think about those questions that Erica has put forward to us, let's get started a little bit deeper and start thinking about phonological awareness and what exactly that is. When we talk about phonological awareness, we are referring to our ability to hear and manipulate the spoken parts of words and sentences. So we are focusing on the auditory skill set and recognizing that spoken words are made up of individual parts. Phonological awareness is truly an umbrella for developing an awareness of speech sounds. When we're talking about phonological awareness, we're referring to the ability to work with the spoken parts of the sentences and words. At the word level, this looks like segmenting or identifying how many words are in a sentence. It is identifying rhyming words and alliteration, like cute, cuddly cat. It also includes segmenting words into syllables and counting how many syllables are in a word, and then segmenting words into onset and rhyme. For example, in the word dog, the onset is D and the rhyme is og. From there, we also move into thinking about phonemic awareness and what that is. And it's the ability to work with individual sounds or phonemes in words. And it's the most advanced skill under the umbrella of phonological awareness. This is where we develop an understanding of individual speech sounds or phonemes. We focus on segmenting and breaking words into individual phonemes or the onset and rhyme, and then blending and putting them back together. Within phonemic awareness, we're also manipulating sounds where, for example, if we have the word dog, but we remove the duh sound and we replace it with an ul sound, we get a new word. What is that? Eric is going to give us some more specific activities now that look at these specific skills.
All right, to do these activities, I'm going to get you to have either a piece of paper available to you, or you can always add in the chat box. We're also going to get you to use your hands and fingers to show us some information as you do the activities. So the first one I would like to do is I want you to use a finger to tap on your desk. How many words do you hear in the following sentence? Remember, only tap your finger once per word. Here is our sentence. Reading is my favorite hobby. Reading is my favorite hobby. How many words in that sentence? And 5 is the answer. Reading is my favorite and hobby. My next question for you is to whisper 2 more words that begin with the same sound as big. Whisper 2 more words beginning with the same sound as big. Our third question, clap the syllables in your name. So for example, my name is Erica. Erica. Now clap your syllables in your own name. Sorry. Now, my next question for you is to say the word book. Now say the word case. Now put those 2 words together to make a compound word. Bookcase. Our next example, say the word sunshine. Now say the word again without the sun part. It just becomes shine. Our next one, say the word rainbow. Now this time, put the bow part in front of the rain part. Say the word sit. Now say it again, but change the s to b. Our word changes from sit to bit. This time, say the word dot. Now say it again, changing the t to g. Dot becomes dog. These types of auditory drills can be done quickly throughout the day, in transitions, during downtime, when you're in line waiting to go to phys ed, and they help students learn that words and sounds in words can be segmented, isolated, and manipulated. And these are foundational skills for learning to read. Where phonological awareness is the auditory skill set that we just looked at, phonics involves associating the letters with the phonemes that are the sounds. Sorry, we said letters with the sounds. Phonemes are the sounds and graphemes are the letters that make those sounds. Graphemes can be represented by single letters or they may be represented by letter combinations. This is why being able to auditorily discriminate between the units of sound is so important, to be able to tell a word from a sound, a word from a sentence, all of those pieces, and being able to manipulate those sounds and then begin to put them together with their visual representations. Phonics and phonological awareness are not the same, but they are two important keys in learning to read and write.
So phonics is about the letter sound relationships or the groups of sounds we hear and representing them in writing. To demonstrate, we're going to do a quick exercise using the chat function. I'm going to be having you type your answers in the chat, but please don't press enter until I ask you to do so. This way our answers are all going to populate at the same time. Okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to say the sound A, and what I want you to do is type in the ways you can record that sound. How would you write that sound? How many different ways can you write it? Start typing your answers now. Going to give you a moment to do that, but please don't press enter. Okay, now press enter and let's see what ideas we came up with. And I can see a few ideas populating in the chat there. Thank you. So we have AE, EIGH. Yeah, thanks, Erica. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. Right, so there's a lot of different ways we can represent that long A sound. We came up with a lot of those representations within the chat. And as you can see, English is such a complicated language. And there's actually 44 basic phonemes that we need to learn within the English language to support us in understanding as we go through this early literacy process and understanding the phonics that are associated that we need to learn. So thank you for this. Right. And Erica is going to dive a little bit deeper into phonics with us now.
Thank you, Sandy. So phonics is all about building those letter sound relationships or phoneme grapheme relationships, like you guys did with the long A sound. It's all about exploring the rules of written language, directionality in a word. So where do we start? Where does the word end? What rules guide our ability to write certain sounds. While English is a complex language and exceptions exist, it still has rules that can be learned and can be taught to our students. We also consider the spelling patterns and pronunciations of words. So we're thinking about how different words may be spelled similarly or different, or maybe you have two sounds that may be pronounced differently, or try that again, Erica, a grapheme that may be pronounced differently in different words, like eat and great. Phonics develops the student's abilities to decode, which is reading, and encode, which is writing different words. So we're going to do another little activity about what that might look like. We want you to start with the word mop. And you're going to change one letter in the word mop to create another CVC word, consonant, vowel, consonant word. So for example, it gave me, or I created top. Can you change mop into another word just by changing one letter? Feel free to put your answers in the chat. So we can have words like map, we can have words like mom, we can have words like hop, we could have words like sop, where if you're in the rain, you might be sopping. So just by changing one letter and helping students manipulate those letters and sounds helps them to be able to better understand and use their phonics knowledge. Here's another activity that can be done by creating a word ladder. So in creating a word ladder, you're doing the same thing. You're switching one letter at a time. So mop, change to top, change to tap, change to sap, change to map, change to mat. What I'd like you to do is start with the word cat. And I would like you to create your own word ladder with the word cat as your first word. I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to write however many words you can by changing just one letter each time. Once you finish, or once the time finishes, put down the number of words you were able to create or how long your ladder is in the chat box. I'm going to start timing now. And more seconds. In the chat box, write down the number of words that you were able to create in your word ladder. Another thing to think about when you're working with a word ladder is instead of saying switch one letter in the word, maybe we switch one sound at a time. So for example, a word like mop could become shop or stop. Sorry, no, it couldn't become stop. Bad example. Right? Shop could become ship. So you might be changing a letter or you may be changing a sound that is represented by more than one letter. Ah, the winning number was 15 words out of changing cat just by one letter. That is a lovely word ladder. One last activity for us to play with. How many VC, vowel consonant, or CVC, consonant vowel consonant words can you make using only the letters T, M, P, S? And I've distinguished our letters A and O by saying that we're going to use the short A and the short O sound. So I am going to again give you about 20 seconds this time. How many words can you come up with just by using those letters? And once again, count your words up and put the answer in the chat. So as you can see, just by knowing a few phoneme-grapheme correspondences, students can start to work at reading and writing actual words. And they can be able to start to put those pieces together and see themselves as readers and writers. And it only takes just a few letters and sounds.
All right, thank you. So when we think about how do children learn to automatically recognize words and read fluently, reading is not a natural process. In order to build reading skills and fluency, students need to have been explicitly taught phonemic awareness and phonics to help them make connections between the different sounds and make meaning to the written letters on the page. They need continued practice and exposure with these skills to solidify their skills and understanding. Vocabulary and comprehension are also important comprehensions of this process. Building vocabulary can strengthen decoding skills by linking words children sound out to their own embedded vocabulary. We can help students with their vocabulary exposure by building daily read alouds into our literacy time and having thought provoking discussions with our students where they are involved in asking those questions and answering questions. The process of decoding a word alone has a lot involved in it. And to be successful in decoding, students need to learn the sounds they hear in words, so the phonemes, and they need to know which sounds or phonemes connect to which letters or combinations of letters, the graphemes. To summarize, when a student is ready to decode, they're relying on phonological awareness, letter knowledge, phonemic awareness, and sound letter relationships to support them in this process.
So, what might decoding look like if you're practicing in your classroom? So, it can look like, sorry, can't press a button at the same time. It can look like reading words that contain the phonemes that have been explicitly taught. It might look like sounding out words using the phonemes that have been taught. It might look like looking for known letters or letter sequences in unfamiliar words. So, what do we know in those words? So, as we're working with our students, we're really working to practice these decoding skills because decoding is crucial in moving explicitly taught skills from being newly learned to being automatic. And that automaticity of being able to make those letter sound correspondences, being able to match it with the phonological awareness pieces is key and very important into developing skilled readers. So we've already taken a little peek at what decoding entails. And what we want to think about is the simple view of reading, which is decoding combined with linguistic comprehension. And linguistic comprehension refers to a student's ability or a person's ability to use the information that they've received orally. So that includes the words that they have stored in their mental dictionaries, the pronunciations and meanings of words, and to be able to interpret meanings of phrases, sentences, and narratives. So if you say to a child the word cat, they have an understanding of that word. They've heard it before, they have a mental image in their head, they know what that word means. And then students need to build skills in both decoding and linguistic comprehension to be able to understand what they read. Weaknesses in either one of these two areas, decoding and linguistic comprehension, will negatively impact reading comprehension. So it is really key to build both of these sets of skills.
So, decoding is best taught through explicit and systematic instruction. And when we say explicit, what we mean is that we are intentionally teaching the skills clearly and precisely. And then we want to teach these skills in an ordered manner, which means that we're following a specific scope and sequence to ensure all the skills are taught. And we want to avoid those gaps in learning. So, this allows that sequencing of those skills to alleviate that, to make sure that those gaps are not happening. When we talk about word recognition, it is through that continued exposure and practice that students develop word recognition skills where they're able to recognize words quickly without that conscious need to decode. So, again, we're continuing to practice, build that fluency, that automaticity, and build students' confidence and exposure through that continued practice. It is important to have a classroom that is rich in oral language experiences to support linguistic comprehension. And we can achieve this by leading meaningful discussions with our students, embedding those daily read alouds into our literacy instruction, sharing oral stories, and allowing for collaborative opportunities where students are engaging with those conversations with one another. Reading comprehension is the same set of skills as linguistic comprehension, but the information is received through print rather than orally. So we can support reading comprehension by engaging in word reading tasks with vocabulary, building those unfamiliar words, reading short decodable sentences and paragraphs that use the phonemes and graphemes that we've taught, and discussing and responding to what has been read through a variety of ways, such as talking, acting, or drawing.
So we want to support students in creating those mental maps of words that will support their decoding and their word recognition. So orthographic mapping is a process that links the decoding skills and the student's oral language and linguistic comprehension to develop word recognition. These images on your screen demonstrate using a picture to support meaning and Elkonin boxes or sound boxes to support the sounds or the letters in the word. There's one box for each sound in a word. So a word like key would have two boxes, even though it has three letters. And a word like bought would have three boxes, even though it has six letters. Sound boxes support isolating the phonemes, the sounds, and connecting them with the graphemes to allow the students to map out the words. Orthographic mapping requires practices and multiple exposures and opportunities to map and listen to the sounds in words. It requires attention to the individual letters and letter sound correspondences. So we need to make sure that we're paying close attention to that and we're really observing what students are hearing and how they are sequencing the sounds that are in the words. The pictures and context clues can help support the connection of the word with its pronunciation and meaning. I'm going to ask you right now to take a moment and think about the word teach. Write it down on a piece of paper if it'll be helpful for you. And I would like you to think about how many words you can create from the word teach. I'm going to give you 30 seconds again, and your 30 seconds is starting now. All right, that was a short period of time, but what I would like you to do is to take a look at the words that you came up with. How many sounds are you seeing in each of those words? Do you have some two-letter words or two-sound words? Do you have some three-sound words that maybe have four letters in them? Did you separate the C and the H for certain words? So sometimes it represented the ch sound. Sometimes it might have represented the k and the h sound, depending on the word. What about the letters E and A? They were together in teach, making the E sound. Did you separate them? Did you make some long and some short? Did you use any other rules that you already know about how words work? As skillful as we are, or as skillful readers, the phonemes and graphemes can be used flexibly for us because of the amount of practice and exposure that we have had with them. Students need that exposure and that practice to words, to the phonics, to the mapping, to the language and vocabulary, to give them the support that their skills need to develop so that they can become skilled readers. So thinking about that word that we took apart and played with, look at all of the different phonemic and phonics concepts that we may have had to use in order to get there. So I see the magic E in the word hate. I see the EA in heat. I see a short A and a T in at. I see the ch together in cheat. It has a whole different sound in ache, but it stayed together. So thinking about all of the different ways that those phonemes and graphemes can be manipulated to change words and also to come together to help students understand how words work and how it supports them in writing.
So shifting a little bit in terms of thinking now about reading fluency and how do we create reading fluency with our students? Well, we need to model this for them. Again, I just want to highlight the importance of those daily read alouds with your students. There is so much learning that comes from those opportunities within your classrooms. We also need to provide opportunities for them to read aloud and to reread books with confidence and to build their confidence. We need to provide ongoing exposure to those high frequency words or sight words. And we need to have that access to a variety of books, whether that's those just right books, books that they feel they can be confident reading, and also books that they are wanting to read. As I've already mentioned, that repeated exposure for our students is so important. So they know what fluency looks like and sounds like. And so I cannot stress enough how important it is that we read to our students every day. Erica's laughing at me because I talk about this a lot. That those read alouds are so important just because they do provide those opportunities for us to model fluency, what good expression sounds like, and that exposure to new vocabulary. There's so much vocabulary, excuse me, that comes out of a read aloud that students would not naturally hear in a conversation within the classroom. It's just a great learning opportunity all around. We need to provide those opportunities where we read to our students and then they read to us and then they read to others. And so we can provide opportunities for them where we can give them feedback and help them self monitor their reading success. It's helpful if we can provide opportunities for them to read if you have a classroom pet. They could read to the classroom pet. You could bring opportunities in where they can bring a stuffy to the classroom and they can read to their stuffies or a special adult or visitor within your classroom. Reading buddies are a great way to build excitement and allow students to have those read aloud opportunities. It builds great opportunity within the schools where you have that cross grade partnerships where you can partner your kindergarten students with your grade threes or grade ones and grade fours, and they can read to each other and just enjoy that opportunity together. But that cross grade collaboration is always exciting. But what I just want to highlight is, that opportunity to read aloud in so many different ways. So we've already highlighted a lot of the items that you're going to see on this slide here, but it's just a really nice summary of building that reading fluency. And so just providing those opportunities to read simple sentences with that appropriate speed and intonation, reading sight words, providing opportunities to practice that decoding, those opportunities to read phrases and sentences automatically, model that fluent reading through those read alouds, having students read along while listening to text, providing choice in text, as I mentioned, so that they are interested and wanting to read, and then providing that ongoing feedback to students is so important while they're reading, pointing out things like, you did such a great job. I love how you slowed down here. I love the expression you added here. Great job paying attention to punctuation. I can tell you've been practicing. Just those great things that we already do as teachers.
So our next segment is all about comprehension. And I want you to take a moment and think about, how do we teach children to comprehend text as they read? So we talked about the importance of that comprehension being our goal, that reading comprehension. And we talked about the fact that it came from decoding and students' linguistic comprehension. So take a moment and reflect on, and feel free to put it in the chat, or you may just want to write it on your own paper, on ways that you support comprehension building in your classroom. I'll give you just a few seconds. So as we're thinking about what does reading, teaching, try that again. What does teaching reading comprehension look like? We really want to think about reading as a whole, right? What do our students need? What's going to help them to become the skillful readers that we want them to be? So by providing a varied genre, try that again, Erica, by providing varied genre and text. So thinking about fiction books, nonfiction books, fairy tales, um, uh, adventure stories, mystery stories, all of those pieces. I was working, someone I was working with earlier was doing letter writing, right? And so thinking about, what are the different kinds of texts that we can use with students? How do we help them to identify the story elements in their texts? So what makes this text that type of a text? What might we see in this type of a text? How might we be able to find information in nonfiction texts? How might we be able to visualize an image presented in poetry? How do we teach children to generate their own questions? So if we've had a read aloud or a student has read a text on their own, how can we help them to generate questions about that text? The 5W questions or deeper questions thinking about maybe the moral of a story or a lesson learned in the story. So how might we be able to help them question texts? How might we be able to model summarizing for them and why it's important to summarize? Thinking about our read alouds, if we come to another read aloud or we go to do a read aloud a second time for a different purpose, maybe we practice summarizing what we heard the first time. And how do we connect reading and writing? Because the two are reciprocal skill sets and both help with the comprehension of stories and the comprehension of reading and writing. So we talked early on about a well-defined scope and sequence. And a well-defined scope and sequence really helps the teacher and it helps the students to be able to have a path forward, knowing where to start, being able to see exactly where their students are at a given point in time, knowing what the next steps in instruction will be. And so one of the things that we've worked on here at the Learning Bar and that has been developed in our products is a well-defined scope and sequence, providing that starting point, providing those signposts for what teachers are going to look for as the students are working with the materials so that the teachers know where they are and where they need to go next. And I know for some of you, some of this webinar today might have been a little bit of a review. For some of you, some of the information might be new to you, and that's great. We're glad we had an opportunity to talk about them with you. And there's so many different elements in teaching children how to read that it's a complex task, and students each come to it with their own variety of experiences, their own understandings about how language and stories work. They come to it with their own dialects and language abilities. So really thinking about how a scope and sequence can help level that playing field and can help teachers to see, okay, these are the spots that my students have as strengths, and these are the spots that we need to work on in order to help them to become skilled and happy readers. Having had an opportunity to visit quite a few schools who are implementing Confident Learners products, it never ceases to amaze me when the students begin to thrive using a systematic approach. I remember in the fall of last year, there was a student a teacher had come to me to ask questions about, and this particular student was having great difficulty mastering the alphabet. The student was it was a lot for them to hold on to. They were forgetting things because it was in their short-term memory and then gone. The pieces that were going into their long-term memory may have been going in as confusions, and both the teacher and the student were getting quite frustrated at the whole process. And so the teacher started to use the systematic approach using the Confident Learner scope and sequence. And what we noticed was that the students started to pick up the letters in the sequence that was being used. And they were better able to focus on kind of smaller sets of letters, on being able to look at those letters a little bit more in depth, the symbol, the sound, the name, all of those pieces. And they were able to practice using those letters to build words that they knew, similar to the activity that we had you do earlier on, where we gave you a few consonants and a couple of vowels and asked you to create as many words as you could. And then as the students started to pick up some of the high frequency words that are with the Confident Learners materials, they were able to start creating sentences, and they really started to see themselves as a reader and a writer after the introduction of the first 5 phonemes and the first few high frequency words. And that vision of themselves and that feeling of being a reader and being a writer really provided a foundation for that student to build on their future reading success. I've been working with schools and students and educators for over 30 years. And what I've realized during this time is that the most effective way of teaching a child to read is using a systematic approach to reading. And as a teacher and as somebody who gets easily distracted by shiny things, it's really helpful for me to make sure that I have not left anything untaught. I have not left gaps in my students' learning because I forgot to cover something. So the scope and sequence not only supports the students, but it also supports us as a teacher, and it supports us in our instructional planning because we can see exactly what the student controls and what the student needs next. And that helps me as a teacher to provide clarity and visibility of the child's progress. It helps me to be able to have the right supports and resources there at the right time to support their instruction. And not only does it simplify the instruction in my experience, but we're also seeing schools reporting quicker and more visible results because everybody is on the same page, everybody knows the scope and sequence, and it really helps students to thrive.
Over the last several years here at the Learning Bar, we have developed professional learning that outlines systematic reading instruction to support educators and their students. As Erica just spoke to, it includes a clear scope and sequence for reading instruction spanning phonics and orthographic instruction to reading comprehension. Each solution includes targeted resources, lesson plans, and activities. If you'd like to learn more about these solutions, please attend our upcoming webinars.
So, sorry about that. This particular quote is from one of our partners in Saskatchewan who's using the Confident Learners program. And their educators have completed the systematic reading instruction professional learning. And the school leaders understand how important it is for their teachers, and they know what needs to happen to support their students' growth. I wanted to leave you with this quote so that you can see that having a clear scope and sequence for reading instruction, having access to the right professional learning, formative assessments, and having access to hundreds of aligned resources, lesson plans, and activities can really create an environment where literacy flourishes. Again, if you want to find out any more about these literacy solutions, we're happy to take questions, or you can feel free to ask one of our in-house experts today. Any questions?
Thanks, Erica. Thanks, Sandy. I don't see any questions in the chat box just yet. Let's see here. There's something from Juliana. Blending sounds together is something I noticed students struggling with in classrooms. For example, they could sound out each sound in dog, D-O-G, but then struggle to blend the sounds together. Do you have any suggested tools to help them blend sounds together?
So looking at the way you're blending sounds, sometimes for some students, it's easier to start with 2 sounds. So at. It's definitely easier to start with sounds that are continuous. So it sounds like s, your vowels, it's also possible to do continuous blending. So sat. So really bringing them together, or segmented blending, s, at, sat, sat. So one of the biggest things is looking at how you're blending and how you're supporting your students blending, but also ensuring that they have adequate practice, because it really is in the practice that the students start to become proficient with it. That's a great question. Thank you, Juliana.
Thanks for that question, Juliana. Um, Maybe Erica and Sandy, could you tell us a little bit more about how you've engaged parents and caregivers in this process, right? Not just in the classroom, but helping reinforce those skills at home.
Yeah, so I don't know, Sandy, sorry, I jumped right in, Sandy. I didn't even give you a chance.
You go ahead first, Erica. It's all good.
So something that has been done in a couple of the schools that I've worked with is hosting literacy events at the school. So either an afternoon or an evening. One school in particular brought the parents and grandparents in on an afternoon. The parents and grandparents went to different classes to actually do some of the confident learners activities with their students, and the teachers had it all planned out so that everything that they needed for that particular activity was in a bag, and the parents and grandparents and the students could take that home with them. And what they found was being able to leave the school with 4 or 5 different activities really increased that engagement at home in practicing the skills, but also increased the conversations that were being had between the parents and grandparents and the teachers, because they felt a little bit more connected to what was going on in the classroom. And so getting parents and grandparents involved in fun ways, in ways that help keep the students engaged. So maybe through the games, maybe through other little activities, is always amazing and wonderful.
I was I was just going to add, very similar in terms of those literacy events and the importance of, those literacy events, building that homeschool connection is really important. Similar to what Erica said, I was part of a school where we had literacy luggage, where, they had children's books and then there's activities within little backpacks, and the students could sign out the backpacks and take them home to play and engage in with the families. And so there was different manipulatives and books connected to the literature, and then it gave them ideas of how they could extend the learning at home. I also love the idea with younger students of going on those nature walks and looking for environmental print within your community, looking for opportunities of just let literacy around you. The importance of also modeling reading for your children and letting them see you read, reading with them, alongside them, and just sharing that joy of reading with them, and also that importance of students where English might not be their first language, of continuing to read and honor that other language in the home as well, are really important components of building literacy at home.
Wonderful. A really critical part of literacy development certainly happens in the home. Um, it- what would you do if a student really just doesn't seem to get it, no matter how much practice we do, right? Whether that's blending or the letter sound associations and things like that.
I'll go first. So I think it's just we have to remember that learning to read is a process and it's a continuum, and we're all going to learn at different times and at different rates. And so it's also we have to have patience with our students and our children. And so we're not all going to learn the same way, and we have to keep trying different ways and different tactics. What I love about our scope and sequence is that we really focus on, the first 5 phonemes, and that's the area, is instead of trying to focus on the 26 letters of the alphabet, let's focus on those first 5 letters and sounds, and we really pare it down so that students can have success in those letters and phonemes. And then we build in a few high frequency words, and that's how we can start to build students capacity and confidence. And we start to look at how can we bring success to them in a variety of different ways. And so we're not just teaching it one way, we're looking at a variety of different ways. So whether it's through writing, whether it's through those read alouds, whether it's through movement. So we're giving them a lot of different experiences and ways to build in their success. Um, they eventually do catch on and they want to learn. And so it's also looking for those hooks of, how do we build that want to learn and engagement for them? Erica, I'm sure you have something to add on as well.
Yeah, I love that, Sandy. Really thinking about how do we build on what the successes are, even if those successes may be small at first, right? One of the other pieces about our product is the fact that we have the para assessment, which really gives us a good idea of where the student is working and what they're working on, what they already control and what they need to know next. And that aligned with the learning objectives in each of the modules that we have really helps teachers be able to pinpoint what it is that might be holding this student back, that might be standing in the way of them being able to um, pick up the information as we would like them to. Sometimes it comes from the collaboration that happens within schools, right? Our schools are made up of many experts. And so thinking about, you know what, there might be somebody else on my team who can take a look at these learning objectives, take a look at the data from the assessment, and kind of see if there's something that I'm missing for this particular student before we kind of think about, okay, maybe we need to go into some additional testing for other reasons and eliminate other possibilities that might be standing in the way. But it really allows us through our materials to pinpoint what the student is doing right now and to really see, okay, there's where they are in the scope and sequence. So these are my next steps. And then how do I scaffold those next steps for success, like Sandy said?
Yeah, when we talk about common questions, that is certainly one of the most common questions, right? And I recall having this conversation a couple of years ago with some of these schools. That, you know, the research shows it could be 5 times that the child needs to be exposed to a particular letter sound or this skill, or it could be 100, right? There's an incredible range, and we have to persevere and of course try different strategies and tactics, right, over time.
Yeah.
Uh, we've covered a lot of ground there, but could you talk a little bit about, you know, you mentioned the scope and sequence, but kind of the balance of the different skills that we've talked about today, right? There's a continuum of skills and we can't cover them all at once. So how would we go about tackling them? Where do we start?
Excellent question. um, really kind of thinking about, I think it all has to start from where our students are, right? And looking at the scope and sequence and seeing, I know myself when I originally started exploring the science of reading, I didn't have a scope and sequence to follow. And, you know, I kind of did it in a haphazard way and, you know, really didn't necessarily spend as much time as I should have on some of those early skills, the phonological awareness pieces, the phonemic awareness pieces, and then starting to build into that the phonics piece, so the phonemes and the graphemes coming together, right? And so, you know, and then looking through to starting comprehension right from the start, right? So when we put these words, these letters together or these sounds together, it creates a word and that word should create an image. And then, you know, gradually building that and making it more complex and more sophisticated so that our students can then get into some of those deeper comprehension pieces, you know, that the asking questions about text and inferring and all of those comprehension strategies that come with the advancing skills as readers. I'm not sure if I was exactly linear with that answer.
Would you like to add anything, Sandy?
I was just going to say, like, being really thoughtful with your planning and knowing your students. So, like Erica said, is just gathering your data, looking at your class data, and looking at what do my students know and where do I need to go, and how am I going to plan accordingly moving forward based on the concepts that I need to um, plan for successful literacy instruction that Erica spoke to.
Andy, that intentionality is key.
Yes.
Knowing what we need to do next and really planning for it to happen and planning for the eventuality that it might not happen right away and that we might have to look at doing it in a slightly different way.
Mhm. Great answers. I'm not seeing any other questions at the moment, so I think we'll wrap up here with one final slide and a thank you. So the last slide, Erica had mentioned this, but we have an upcoming series of webinars or additional webinars. This Thursday afternoon, we're going to go into a little bit more detail on Confident Learners itself. And then we'll talk more about the actual scope and sequence and the theory, the research behind it on the 5th at 1 p.m. Eastern. So we've scratched the surface here today. This is a complex, very deep topic. We certainly don't think that 1 hour is going to answer all of your questions or give you all of the information you need. If you'd like to learn more, we'd love to see you at our upcoming webinars. And we thank you very much for your time today and attending. As we said, we'll send out a recording of the webinar. If you have any additional questions, you can reply to that email. Our team is happy to engage.